Hellraiser 1987 wasn't just another horror film about monsters and gore, it was a quiet provocation, a film that suggested pleasure and pain were not opposites, but neighbors. That curiosity itself could be a form of damnation. Audiences thought they saw the ending, the puzzle box destroyed, the house abandoned, evil contained. But buried in production notes, early cuts, and narrative logic is a final scene that reframes everything. One that implies the story never actually ends and escape was never an option. The camera was meant to linger longer, not on blood or spectacle, but on consequence. A final image that would have clarified the true purpose of the cenobites and why the box always finds its way back. Test audiences never saw it. Studios quietly moved past it, and most viewers walked away believing the danger was over. But what if it wasn't cut for pacing? What if it was removed because it revealed too much? What was the final scene they didn't want you to see? And what does it say about who was really being punished? Fact number 1. The final scene was designed to remove hope. In Hellraiser, the original final scene was not meant to reassure the audience that anything had been resolved. Early drafts positioned the ending as a denial of closure. The puzzle box is taken away, but not destroyed. The house is abandoned, but not cleansed. Evil is not defeated, it is merely repositioned. The intent was to strip viewers of the comfort horror films usually provide at the finish line. Survival did not equal victory. Escape did not equal freedom. The final beat implied that Hellraiser operates on permanence, not escalation. Once desire is expressed, it cannot be unlearned. The removed emphasis would have clarified that the story does not belong to Kirsty. She is not the conclusion. She is an interruption. The real ending was about continuation. The cycle resumes. The box moves on. Hope was never part of the design. That was the point. Fact number 2. The puzzle box was never meant to be contained. The lament configuration is often treated as a cursed object, but the hidden final scene reframed it as something far more ordinary. It was never supposed to feel ancient or mythic. It was transactional, portable, replaceable. Early edits lingered on the box changing hands again, reinforcing that it does not stay where horror happens. It travels back into normal life, markets, shelves, hands that don't believe in consequences. This detail mattered because it removed the illusion of containment. There is no sealed gateway, no final lock. The box functions because people want it to, and as long as curiosity exists, the box cannot be neutralized. By shortening the ending, the film softened this idea. The audience was allowed to believe danger had been localized and neutralized. The original implication was harsher. Hell follows interest, not locations. Fact number 3. The cenobites were not the final threat. The deleted ending clarified something unsettling. The cenobites are not predators. They are responders. They do not stalk victims. They answer invitations. In the intended final moment, attention shifts away from Pinhead entirely. The camera language deprioritized the monsters and refocused on human behavior, resuming unchanged. This was deliberate. The film's horror was never about beings from another realm. It was about the human impulse to seek sensation beyond limits. Removing the extended ending kept the cenobites visually dominant. Keeping it would have demoted them to functionaries. They were not villains in the traditional sense. They were enforcement, bureaucrats of experience. The true danger was the belief that one could control what the box would offer. The final scene made that clear. The monsters leave. The appetite remains. Fact number 4. Frank was never the worst case. Frank Cotton is remembered as the ultimate cautionary figure, but the hidden ending suggests he was merely early. The original structure implied that Frank's failure was not excess, but impatience. He wanted the extremes immediately. The box did not punish him for curiosity. It punished him for arrogance. The final scene would have contextualized Frank as a prototype, someone who misunderstood the scale of what he was engaging with. Others would come later, some more disciplined, some more cautious, some more dangerous. By removing that implication, the film allows Frank to stand as the singular example, a contained moral case, one man destroyed. The original ending suggested a broader pattern. Frank was not unique, he was replaceable. Fact number 5. Julia's arc was never finished. Julia's death feels conclusive in the theatrical cut, but early notes framed her trajectory as incomplete. The hidden ending treated Julia not as a failed accomplice, but as someone mid-transformation. She had begun to understand the logic of exchange, desire for power, desire for permission, desire to be chosen rather than taken. The extended ending subtly suggested that figures like Julia are more dangerous than people like Frank. They don't chase sensation, they manage it, they feed systems, they justify cruelty as necessity. Removing this emphasis simplified her into a supporting antagonist. Keeping it would have complicated the gendered power dynamic at the film's core. The real horror was not her violence, it was her adaptation. Fact number 6. Kirsty was never the final girl. The final scene was meant to undermine the idea that Kirsty had won. Survival did not equal exemption. The box responded to her curiosity just as it had to Frank's. The difference was scale, not category. Early edits implied that Kirsty's refusal was temporary. She escaped not because she was morally superior, but because she was not ready. The box did not reject her. It simply waited. This detail was removed to preserve audience relief. Horror convention demanded resolution. The original ending denied that comfort. Kirsty was not immune. She was postponed. Hellraiser was never about punishment. It was about timing. Fact number 7. The ending was too philosophical for the studio. Studio notes from the period reflect concern that the ending was emotionally unresolved. That phrasing mattered. The final scene did not clarify stakes. It removed them. There was no final triumph, no lesson learned, no moral balance restored. Executives worried that audiences would leave disturbed rather than entertained, not frightened, unsettled. The film would linger too long after the credits. The cut ending was replaced with something quieter and safer, a pause instead of a question. But the original intent was to deny relief, to let the idea fester. Hellraiser was never meant to end cleanly. It was meant to follow you out. Fact number 8. The house was never the center. The abandoned house feels like the gravitational center of Hellraiser, but the hidden ending deliberately stripped it of that importance. The house was never cursed. It was never chosen. It was simply where desire first found a quiet place to express itself. Early versions of the ending made this explicit by shifting attention away from the property entirely. The real moment of consequence was the box leaving the location. This reframing dismantled haunted house logic. Evil was not bound to walls, rooms, or history. It did not soak into architecture. It moved when interest moved. The house was a staging area, not a source, a temporary container, not an origin. By removing the extended ending, the film allows the house to feel purged, abandoned, emptied, finished. Keeping it would have clarified something far more unsettling. Nothing was cleansed. The structure was irrelevant. The danger did not remain behind. It relocated. Fact number 9. Desire was treated as a virus. The hidden ending leaned into contagion rather than curse. Desire did not behave like a supernatural affliction that targeted specific victims. It spread indirectly, invisibly, through fascination rather than force. The box did not need to wound another body immediately. It only needed to exist within view. Early cuts implied that stories mattered as much as contact, reputation, rumor. The idea that something existed which promised sensation beyond limits, that knowledge alone was enough to ensure continuation. Someone else would want it. Someone else would seek confirmation. This approach was abstract and deeply uncomfortable. There was no spectacle to point at, no monster actively hunting, just interest moving quietly through social space. Theatrical edits softened this implication. They returned horror to visible action, but traces remain embedded in the film's structure. Hellraiser's horror does not rush. It waits for curiosity to spread. Fact number 10. The ending rejected moral hierarchy. The removed ending made a radical choice. It refused to judge. No character was framed as deserving their fate more than another. No action was labeled correct. No worldview was validated. Desire was not punished because it was sinful, nor rewarded because it was brave. It was simply shown as dangerous. This neutrality unsettled test audiences. Viewers wanted alignment, someone to root for, someone to condemn. The film denied both. By cutting the extended ending, the studio reintroduced emotional clarity. Survivors felt like survivors. Monsters felt like villains. Consequences felt earned. The original ending rejected that structure entirely. It suggested that desire operates outside morality, that wanting something deeply does not make you evil, but it does make you vulnerable. The studio chose clarity. The original ending chose honesty. Fact number 11. The box was a mirror, not a trap. Early drafts described the lament configuration not as a lure, but as a reflector. It did not promise pleasure or pain. It responded to intent. What someone believed they were seeking determined what they received. The hidden ending reinforced this idea by presenting the box unchanged. It was not corrupted by previous use. It did not grow more violent. It did not adapt. It waited. Patient, neutral, available. Removing this beat transformed the box into a cursed artifact. Keeping it framed the box as something far more unsettling, honest. The danger was not deception. The box did exactly what it was supposed to do. It revealed preference, limits, capacity. In this reading, the box never lies. It only answers. Cutting the ending softened that truth, but it remains implied. Fact number 12. The cenobites were never meant to return immediately. The original ending did not tease continuation through spectacle. There was no promise of the cenobites returning in force, no stinger designed to excite. Instead, it implied inevitability, a slower, quieter certainty. This distinction mattered. The horror was not serialized. It was conceptual. The story did not continue because monsters survived. It continued because desire always reappears. By trimming the ending, continuation became optional. A sequel could exist, or not. The narrative felt complete. The original ending removed that option. It suggested that even without follow-up, the system remained active. Someone else would open the box eventually, not because they were targeted, but because they were curious. The cenobites did not need to return immediately. Time worked in their favor. Fact number 13. Hell was bureaucratic by design. The hidden final beat emphasized order over chaos. There was no escalation, no dramatic flourish, just process continuing. Hell was not portrayed as wild or sadistic. It was structured, efficient, regulated. Requests were answered. Exchanges were honored. Boundaries were enforced. This stripped away fantasy and replaced it with systems. Hell operated less like a nightmare and more like an institution. That framing was deeply unsettling because it mirrored human structures. Contracts, permissions, consequences. Audiences expected spectacle. They received implication instead. The studio worried this approach felt cold, too distant, too real. So the ending was softened. The bureaucracy was obscured. But traces remain in the cenobites' behavior. They are not chaotic. They are administrative. Fact number 14. The ending was considered too adult, not in content but in expectation. The ending assumed the audience would connect ideas without explanation, that they would recognize patterns, that they would sit with unresolved implications rather than demand answers. Studios did not trust this approach. They feared confusion would be mistaken for failure. That ambiguity would feel unfinished rather than intentional. So the ending was trimmed. The narrative was given firmer edges. Emotional resolution replaced conceptual disturbance. The original ending asked more of the viewer. It refused to explain itself. It trusted implication to linger. That trust was deemed risky. So it was removed. What remained was safer. What was lost was sharper. Fact number 15. The film still carries the ending inside it. Even without the final scene, the structure still points toward it. The box survives. It is not destroyed. Curiosity is not extinguished. Desire is not resolved. No character truly escapes the system. They only exit the frame. The ending was removed. The logic was not. The film pauses rather than concludes. It leaves the mechanism intact, waiting, ready, unchanged. Hellraiser does not close a door. It steps aside. The horror does not end. It idles. And that may be the most honest ending the film ever had, even without showing it. The final scene of Hellraiser was never about shock. It was about denial. Denial of closure. Denial of comfort. Denial of the belief that surviving the story meant escaping it. The box was not destroyed. The system was not broken. Desire was not cured. Only the camera stopped watching. That is why the ending feels unfinished. Because it is. Hellraiser does not resolve its horror. It releases it back into the world, quietly, without ceremony and without warning. The danger does not roar. It waits. It waits for curiosity, for boredom. For someone who believes they are different, the scene they didn't want you to see does not change the story. It confirms it. Because in this world, hell is not a place you fall into. It is a choice you eventually make.